Michigan is the new number one for the first time since 2013, while Arizona falls a little further than expected after a 2-loss week.
Welcome in to Locked On College Basketball Squad Show, your go-to spot for everything happening on the hardwood, from blue blood battles to bracket busters and everything in between. Join the squad of hoops junkies as we break down the biggest stories with the boldest takes and unfiltered opinions. Because here, we don't hold back. It's the College Basketball Squad Show on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, folks, and welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Squad Show. I am your host, Andy Patton, joined today by a handful of our fantastic Locked On hosts, and you're joining us here at the Locked On Podcast Network, of course, the number one sports podcasting network. I want to thank all of you for making the show your first listen or your first watch of the day, and remind you that today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. Wins define the moment, but putting in the work, that's what defines you. Stay tuned for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you. Well, folks, there was quite a shakeup in the AP top 5. We're going to talk about Arizona's fall from number 1 to number 4. We're going to talk about Big Monday giving us an all-time classic between Houston and Iowa State. We'll break down that game. We'll also talk about Jerome Tang's departure from Kansas State, and I swear there will be other non-Big 12 topics that we talk about on this show as well. But I do want to start with what we saw from the AP poll. I don't think we were surprised to see Michigan move to number 1. Obviously, Arizona having dropped both those games last week at Kansas and then losing to Texas Tech at home. But I was a little surprised at how far Arizona fell, all the way from 1 down to 4. And JJ, I want to start with you. Obviously, the host for Locked On Blue Devils, you see Duke. They move up to number 3. Feels like Arizona and Duke's resumes are very similar in a lot of ways. Were you surprised that Arizona fell behind Duke, or did you kind of feel like that's where you thought they'd end up being?
I guess a little surprised, although when I keep in mind, recency bias is very much so a thing. And so when you see a team lose twice in 1 week, you're prone to see a bit of a further drop. Honestly, I had the billing in my head being so Duke-centric that there would be this climb for the Blue Devils after a win over Clemson, currently second in the league, 2-2, so that we would be building up this weekend's 1 versus 2 matchup. Instead, we've got your good old 1 versus 3, 2 versus 4. So, yeah, I think surprised a little bit. But then, like I said, when you factor in the recency bias of it all, it goes to show you fall just a little bit.
Well, you got to probably feel pretty good about thinking maybe we should have been number 2, especially after how today went. No comparison between the opponents, Syracuse and Iowa State, but obviously Duke getting the win where Houston falls. Parker, obviously Houston, I think they deserved to be number 2, at least. Like it certainly didn't feel like an undeserved spot, but obviously this loss here, it's a road loss. It's a team with a ridiculous home environment. Do you feel like Houston still, where are you kind of at with the Cougs now following this loss in terms of where they should have been or should be now in the top 5?
Well, I mean, I think going into the Monday night game, they'd done anything to be in the top 2 in the country, right? So I don't think that's because that's when the ranking came out. I don't think I'm upset about that. Sampson said so Houston first got their number 1 overall in the AP poll like 4 or 5 years ago, back when they were in the American, and he was very upfront and blunt. Like all of these spots, 1 through 25, are just kind of rented, and you hold on to it until you lose, and then you drop it all. Like it's not a big deal in that sense. You're just trying to get better every week. Now, I will say, if Houston loses tonight to Iowa State, and then on Saturday to Arizona, and then the following Monday to Kansas, because that is the 3-game stretch we're at right now, they probably drop a lot more than a couple of spots. If they only lose the Iowa State game out of those 3, I bet they don't drop all that many spots. I think that's kind of, this was a Final Four feeling matchup, and you're on the road and you lost by 3 points. Okay, like it happens. We'll see you in Indianapolis next time. Like that's okay. I'm trying not to beat myself up about it because it was absolutely a game Houston could have won. But in the big scheme of things, it's not a huge deal they didn't.
Indianapolis, why can't we get this again in Kansas City? Why are we rushing? Come on, man. What are we doing?
Because that is aim south. I don't need any of those problems.
Leith, glad to have you here on the show. Obviously, we're talking about the top 5 ranking and Arizona falling from 1 all the way to number 4. And we got JJ and Parker's input on that. But I'm curious your thoughts. Were you surprised at Arizona falling, again, quote unquote, all the way down 2 spots to number 4? Did that feel about right for a 2-loss week?
I was kind of expecting them to fall to 4 because, Duke won, Houston won at that point. So I do think in terms of form, Houston impressed me enough to jump over Arizona, and their resumes are similar. I think if you were to look at like the quad 1 wins and some of the best wins, Arizona probably holds the torch, and only Michigan really has a better resume in that regard. But I had no problem with it. I think it had UConn jumped over Arizona. That's where I would have had an enormous gripe, considering Arizona had beaten UConn and they play in a far better conference. But I had no gripe about Houston jumping over. And honestly, in watching that game, I came away very impressed with Houston. Iowa State did a great job closing, but I came away impressed with Houston. And Arizona, I think part of the thing that's hard for my fans to kind of cogitate and think about is Koa Pete's been ailing for a couple of weeks. I think I said it last show. I thought he was going to miss some time because he looked hurt. Mm-hmm. And the full Arizona team hasn't lost, and the team that's got it hindered, Koa Pete, has. And so if you're to look on form, which is the way I think it should be voted on, as well as overall resume, Houston's looked better. Duke's looked better. When Arizona's right, I'd probably still take Arizona over Duke. Houston scares me a little bit, but I got no problem with number 1. Number 1.
I didn't think someone would say cogitate on the show today. So.
I would say the Duke guys over there. You said cogitate up there. That's a big word.
Stanford fan, and so it checks out. Hey, for what it's worth, I was just checking because Ken Pom and Torvik have both already updated following the game in Ames. Houston stays is number 2 at Torvik, while Duke is number 2 at Ken Pom, for what it's worth. So it's split there, even on the computer side of things.
Well, that's kind of what I wanted to ask next is who do we trust the most? Exclude Michigan because they're number 1 for a reason. We feel like they, deserve that spot. But out of that next kind of group, you have Houston. Obviously, they had that loss tonight, but I don't think any of us feel too bad about Houston following that. And then you have Duke, you have UConn, you have Arizona. And I think now we kind of toss Iowa State into that mix. We'll talk a little bit more about the ins and outs of that game specifically, but kind of out of that group, it feels like a lot of 1 seeds, some 2 seeds in there. Who feels like the team that we're most confident about, whether you're biased or not, about making a Final Four run this year?
Can I ask a question?
Please.
Are we assuming health across the board?
I mean, I think factor in health. If you think that that's going to be a problem for a team, then take that into account. But if they're healthy now, sure.
And I assume we're not picking our own teams.
Well, pick your own team if you want.
I guess I could.
If you think that's unbiasedly the answer, then do it.
No, I think there's a great argument for Houston. I will say the one team that Andy didn't mention that maybe because they're one of the 2 teams that has beaten Houston in the Big 12 is Tech. Tech is sorry, I'm a Big 12 guy, Isaac. I saw what you're about to go with there, but Tech has beaten all of these top tier teams. Every team you've mentioned, right? It feels like the Dukes, the Houstons. So I feel like they also are a team I wouldn't want to see in my bracket or anything like that. If you're talking about that far down the road.
Andy,
But that's a different statement to me. Is if we're talking about reliability and floor, I think Houston's as high as anyone, whereas Tech is able to be beaten if you get a bad day from JT Toppin, whereas Tech's a team that you don't want to face. To answer the initial question that Andy gave is I think that Arizona, when healthy, it has a extremely high floor because very few teams can rebound with them and shoot as many high quality shots. Arizona doesn't need any threes. And if you look at it, just wipe everything out. I think Arizona had struggles. Kopi injured. They were up by 7 with 3 minutes, 26 seconds against Tech. And they're up for 31 of the 40 minutes against Kansas at Kansas in what I thought was the worst game Arizona played all season. And so that speaks to the floor to me. If you get Koa Pete healthy, I think they've got as high a floor as anyone. Houston's right there with me. I mean, don't get me wrong. Duke's only lost by a handful of points in their games. I think that there's just less volatility in this year's top teams. I really think that they're extremely steady and there's not that much separating them. I just think that health matters in terms of the depth for the top team. So if Duke were to lose a starter, I think it would hurt them. Obviously, if it were Cam Boozer, that's a different story. Koa Pete, the strength for Arizona is that's the guy with 30 against Florida. You miss him, and most people are I just thought he was playing poorly, but now it's coming out that he's been hurt, and those are 2 losses. If Houston loses a player, all of a sudden they're more vulnerable, but it's not the same. Like I think Duke's the top heaviest, and so that would be the team I think is most vulnerable. But all of them have extremely high floors to me.
Obviously, with Houston,
I can't argue with that.
Obviously, Houston, Kingston going out would be a big deal. He's a pretty prolific scorer. Emmanuel too. I will say though, it does feel like by and large, it's just like next guy up kind of thing with Houston. If I'm going to plug up my own team for a second, I do think the other thing with Houston is that Floor Leaf mentioned they got 3 losses by a combined 10 points in the year so far. But they also they can go up and score in the 90s with you like they did against Arkansas, or they can muck it down in the 50s and 60s like they do every week. It feels like they can kind of go both ends because this 2-point guard thing they got going right now. And so I kind of feel like they can play to a lot of different people's style of basketball. And then I'm going to defer to other people on focus. I've been so Big 12 focused lately to try and see how this race, because it's truly a wild conference right now. Florida has knocked off a bunch of teams that are playing well as of late, and Brandon is very annoying on Twitter. So there's that too, but
they're crushing people. It's insane. Look, I think we got to get UConn into this conversation too. Literally, they've got 2 losses. One of them is without 2 starters to Leaf and Arizona, who I think are obviously very much in this conversation. So their one healthy loss is at MSG to St. John's, and that's like a anything goes rivalry-ish type game. All they've got left is Creighton at Villanova, St. John's at home, Seton Hall. Like UConn's finishing the regular season with 2 losses. Like I feel like the floor is very high. However, I feel like margins of victory have not been as robust as I would maybe hope they would be. So that gives me a little bit of cause of pause in terms of the answer to Andy's specific question. But man, UConn's got to be in this conversation.
Well, historically, does it feel like it's a soft Big East this year?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right.
It is, and I think as the Gonzaga person, I don't think I can make this argument in good faith, but when you play in a conference like with heated rivalries the way that the Big East has, and the Big East is down, it's going to make your margins tough because Georgetown's going to bring everything that they got. Seton Hall is going to bring everything that they got. And so, and I don't think UConn's even really playing down. They're having some moments. They've had some injuries as well, which I know has been a part of this conversation. But again, I think the argument that, their conference schedule is not preparing them as well, it just hasn't really been proven true. I mean, they won back-to-back national championships. Gonzaga's gone to national championships. San Diego State went to a national championship. You can absolutely do it. And I think the Big East in particular, there's so much history and so much pride in that conference that I think you're seeing teams, step up and play well against UConn. And I think there's, even the counter argument to that being that this makes them more battle tested in some ways and makes them more prepared. Obviously, they are going to see a level up in competition once they get to the Sweet 16, but I don't think that that's something that Danny Hurley in particular and that UConn team won't be prepared for.
Do you think that the Gonzaga teams that did make the title game really had any close calls, though? Because if you look at UConn in a far better Big East, the 2 years they won it, they beat those teams badly, except for Creighton at Creighton. But those Creighton teams, one made an Elite 8 and the other team was a 3 seed. And they had Kalkbrenner, Shireman, Alexander, all those guys. This year's Big East is terrible other than St. John's. And they beat Villanova in overtime at UConn. At UConn, they barely beat Georgetown recently. I feel like those Gonzaga teams, with the exception of a rare St. Mary's scare, were dominant in all their wins. And UConn was in their other championship run. So I do think there's something to Isaac's point of their margin of victory is not great. If you look at the net, which I'm not even a big believer in the net, but they're a 3 seed per the net, not a close to a 1, even though they're 24-2.
I'll say, those Gonzaga, to answer the question on the Gonzaga questions, yes, they didn't have a lot of close calls. They lost to BYU in 2017 when they went all the way to the national championship. And then that weird COVID 2021 season, they beat the doors off basically everybody that year, although their closest game was also to BYU. And again, BYU being now a Big 12 program kind of lends some credence to that argument. But I do think it matters that UConn has played some close games. I just don't think it matters that much necessarily in the grand scheme of things. And I think that coaching matters here too. And I think that Danny Hurley's a coach who has found a way to get them wins in close games. And I think that will help them. But yeah, it's not exactly a good thing. You'd feel better about them if they're beating the doors off of the teams that aren't very good in this conference. But I don't think it's going to hurt them all that much when you get into March. Let's talk. That's about as much non-Big 12 talk as we're probably going to have on this show, if we're being honest, because we're going to move on. We're going to talk Big Monday, featured a big blowout and a big comeback. We're going to talk about Duke's win over Syracuse. We're going to talk about an all-time classic between Houston and Iowa State, what those games mean for these teams going forward. All that coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, this is Mazda's moving the game forward. For those who show there's more to the score than what's on the screen, and we'll talk about this game more in a second, but Iowa State down 10 with under 8 minutes to go at home against number 2 Houston. They went on a 17-4 run, secured the win. Tamin Lipsey got a clutch rebound in the final seconds to ice this game, proving that height doesn't measure heart. And that's what reminds us what it really takes to raise the bar. It's that extra work on the court. It's dialing in every detail. It's giving it that extra fire, that grit, and that never quit attitude. Mazda puts that same passion into every model. Highlights make the reel, but what it took to get there, that's what makes it count. And there's more to a Mazda because there's more to you. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. If you've ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person, FanDuel is giving you the chance to do so with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. You just use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for 2. That's right, flights, tickets, the whole experience. And if you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in. I love futures at this time of the year. Whether it's picking a team to win a championship or grab a conference title, it adds that extra layer of excitement to every game down the stretch. And now not only can your pick get you some cash, it could also send you to the finals. And looking ahead, number 1 Michigan, we talked about them. They are 1.5-point favorites on the road at Purdue. Boy, that is going to be an incredible game on Tuesday night. Folks, visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, folks, I want to thank all of you for making the Locked On College Basketball Squad Show your first listen or first watch of the day. And of course, thank you to all of you for helping to make Locked On the #1 sports podcasting network. All right, with respect, JJ, we're going to start with the game. There was a little bit more.
You don't want to start with the blowout in Cameron?
Understood.
Electric.
You know what? I'm Duke got to 100. That was incredible. Great stuff. We will get more into it, but I want to talk about, we've kind of touched on this game, but we haven't really gotten into the specifics of what happened in Ames on Monday night between Houston and Iowa State. Just an incredible game of basketball. The shot making, I mean, we're talking about 2 of the best defenses in the country, and we had 4 turnovers in the first half, something like that. Just huge shot after huge shot. Iowa State went cold in the second half, found their groove. They always talk about Ames magic, and it really felt like that was there. Parker, I know we've kind of talked about this game a little bit, and I'm sure you've been talking about it for the last hour and a half or so, but just kind of big picture, what this game was like, just watching it and kind of seeing 2 of the top 6 teams in the country going at it on Monday night.
First, Andy, we got to fix your verbiage here because Cyclones fans are going to vilify you for saying Ames magic instead of Hilton magic.
Apologies.
we got to get that right. I will not have us being slandered for our incorrect verbiage. Okay, Parker, go ahead.
There's another apology to add at the end of the show. No, so I look, I walk away from this game and trying to be level-headed, like, okay, Houston absolutely could have walked out of Ames with a victory. They were up 10 points with about 7 minutes left. And then things went dry. Things went dry with Emmanuel Sharp on the bench with foul trouble. Things went dry for just their own shot making. They just couldn't make shots. For what it's worth, I don't know why a kicked ball is not reviewable, but a kicked ball is apparently not reviewable. And there was a fairly egregiously called kickball play where it actually hits JoJo Tuckler's hand very clearly. It would have been a fast break for Houston. Instead, it's a sideline out of bounds, immediate 3-point basket for Iowa State. Like, those little things in a razor-thin margin don't feel so great. But honestly, you're also like, okay, it's mid-February. You're up 10. You probably should have come out with that one, whatever. I do think, though, that there were a couple, things that you mentioned that are big picture for Houston. Like, okay, Houston's defense is their calling card. They only turned Iowa State over 3 times. And honestly, they typically turn over the opponent's point guard 3 times. Right? Like this is not it kind of sticks out to me as, okay, is that a elite team problem? Because I don't think of Iowa State as having tremendous, like Lipsy does a lot of things well, and they do a lot of things really well at Iowa State. I don't think of them as a team that takes care of the ball well. I think as a team as like an elite NBA bound point guard or something like that running the show. And so I'm like, okay, does that translate to like when they see Burries in Arizona next weekend or Darren Peterson on Monday? Like, how does that translate to those games? And then honestly, they ended up evening out and actually taking the lead in the rebounding battle in the second half. But in the first half, they were getting beat up on the boards, and that never happens to Houston. You kind of tell they must have chewed Chris Nack out with some very choice words at halftime because he had pretty good opening the second half. Kings Flemings is that guy though, and I feel like when we got 4 on our team, we got a chance, and I'll take that.
Can we
Winning in
talk about
names is just not for everybody, though. Sorry, that's my that was my Super Bowl last year. I get one. Let me get one.
Super Bowl.
Kansas State won in names last year. Let me get that one. Hey, Kingston Fleming looked good. You're right, but you not only had to worry about Hilton magic, you also had to worry about playing Jefferson on President's Day. That felt like a cheat code.
Jefferson.
Well said.
But can we talk about that assist he had to Nate Heisey for the go-ahead 3 and the fact that Nate Heisey was so shot ready? Parker, I know you hated it, but as a coach, I know you loved that. How like
it was a volleyball set. It was
split second.
It was crazy how quick he got that thing off. No dip. Like he was
with
ready.
like Kingston Flemings is not JoJo Tugler. He is 6'4".
Right.
He is running out there to contest the
Let me
shot.
see. I've got to pull. Let me watch him play.
No, don't
God,
pull it out. I don't want to watch it. No, man.
Oh yeah, I mean he's right there. Even that kind of sidestep, hand in his face.
Well, and it almost feels like Flemings is like avoiding. You don't want to foul him. You don't want to run through him.
It's a smart defensive play. Which, by the way, can we talk about that pom that was in our view on the other side of the floor? Like what is going on? I
How about Hilton magic? What is that?
Okay, but for Nate Heisey,
someone's hat as well.
Nate Heisey hits this go-ahead shot, but poor guy is not the most notable Heisey in the athletic sphere.
Yeah, they said that a few times
on this Monday because his sister's out here like beating up on the Swedes in the Olympics, and it's great.
That's taken over to be the new like, hey, do you know Jalen Suggs played quarterback? or that RJ Barrett was related to Steve Nash.
Yep.
Wait, I never heard that till right now.
It was said a lot.
These are the classics of college basketball.
The classics.
I wanted to give some love to Mercy Miller for the dunk that he had. One for the name that he has, and then Parker, I know it didn't end up winning the game or anything like that, but goodness gracious, on the road and to throw it down like that was beautiful.
Well, but to JJ's point, that was one of several moments where it's like, okay, Houston's actually kind of taken the crowd out of it. That was like the whole, everyone goes, whoa, everything got quiet. Kingston's 3 to put Houston up 10 kind of felt like one of those moments too. There were these Mercy's dunk obviously looked like everyone on Twitter went crazy, but there in Hilton, they're like, oh God, like what just happened? Mm-hmm. It felt like, okay, Houston can take the crowd out of it and win this game. And then when you don't score, it adds up pretty quickly.
Well, and part of it, Parker, is the fact that dunk by Mercy Miller was 2 of just 7 points that the bench scored for Houston. And, we were talking a little bit about the depth earlier, and that feels like something that, I've paid a lot of attention to Isaiah Hartwell this year as somebody who chose not to go to Gonzaga. And by the way, these 2 games were a little aggravating for a Gonzaga fan to watch Kingston Flemings go off, to watch Nick Hamenia have an incredible game for Duke, which we'll talk about in a second. Blake Buchanan at Iowa State was also a Zag target. So a lot of guys that I was like, oh, they'd be looking really good in the Gonzaga uniform right now. But, Hartwell's a guy who's been inconsistent. I know he's a freshman. I know that Sampson, if he had his way, he would not be playing freshman except Fleming yes. At this point, but not specifically on Hartwell, but just the bench in general. Is there some concern about like the depth overall, or is it more of a like, hey, these guys have specific roles and it's not to score the basketball?
Well, I do think that when like against BYU, I thought Chase McCarr, I thought Khalifa Sacco played really well. I thought Khalifa Sacco played really well against Kansas State the other day too. And like I said, Hartwell played well against Baylor. They each kind of had their game. There just was none of them tonight necessarily. Now, I think Hartwell's a lot of things. So Hartwell's reputation going into high school was like Devin Booker. and he has a lot of things that are frankly feel more like Dennis Rodman. Like he's much more throwing his body around and that kind of stuff now in a way that I think matched up with what his high school highlight tape would have been like. But he certainly is not the scorer that we thought he was going to be. He has not been the scorer he thought he was going to be coming out of school. McCarty usually makes 1 out of 3 threes. He only shot 1. He missed it in this game. Sacco usually has a couple dunks. He got called for travel on one and only had one other one, right? So like that just hurts. And in a 3-point game, like each one of those, right, hurts you a little bit.
How tall is Taman Lipsey?
Not
6'1".
That offensive rebound just coming across the lane on that free throw. It's like, how do you let little tiny Taman Lipsey, who is all of however tall he is, come across and get that rebound? I mean, I get the
And that was on
Cenac.
Cenac, I think, Cenac went for the ball instead of boxing out. That's a brutal mistake to make at that point in the game.
Oh, so we don't play freshmen. Got it. Understood.
Yeah, exactly.
And Cenac had 12 rebounds that game. He zoned out for a play. And I will say, like, he gets criticized a lot for being a freshman in a physical sense, physicality sense, I should say. He's 6'11", 240. He has all the tools, but like he does get called out for that a lot from Sampson and the crew, and then gets praised when he does it right. That's a moment I'm sure he's going to dread for the next 48 hours. Like that will be rough for the next 48 hours.
But that possession where he had like 47 offensive rebounds in a row was crazy. Do we know anything about Isaiah Harwell's ankle yet? Speaking of him,
he came back in the game.
I just couldn't tell how he looked once he was back. That's fine.
Yeah, I he played on it. I can't. I don't like to gradiate that. If you played, you played. If you didn't, you didn't. I can't. In between there, it's like you're somewhere in the middle.
Well, then I'm just gonna sit out anytime I heard anything ever. Okay, how
welcome
about
to the NBA?
Yes, Duke just obliterated Syracuse. They should
That
quit.
was fun.
And yeah, wow.
JJ, I love the fact that your team shot nearly as well from 3 as they did from the free throw line in this game. That's probably not usually a good sign for the opponent that Duke shot 60% from 3, 65% from the line. I suppose you'd like a little bit better than there, but I can't imagine you're going to find too many things to nitpick in a game where your team scored 101 points, 61 of them in the second half here. And I think the amount of shots missed by Duke in the second half, you can pretty much count them on one hand. A truly dominant performance. Yes, it's Syracuse. Yes, they've been struggling this year, but you got to feel even better about this team coming off of a couple of really dominant wins for Duke in the last week or so.
Yeah, Andy, I overlook free throws at Duke. It's just 3-pointers and dunks, what we like to celebrate there in Cameron Indoor. 30 straight wins inside Cameron Indoor Stadium. John Shire now 61-3 as the Duke coach inside Cameron, which is just silly to say out loud. Awesome to see, Cooper Flagg and Con Knipple sitting there baseline celebrating this game, and Coach K's hanging out with Steve Wojah. I mean, it was just an all-around Duke game. Carmelo's in the building, reminiscing on gold medal games with Coach K and not watching his son. I mean, it was epic. It was awesome all around. 72% shooting in the second half. As you said, 61 points scored, 5 guys in double figures. And I think for Duke, Jimenez turned a corner the last few games. Caden Boozer, back-to-back 12-point games. And then, you have Cam Boozer and Isaiah Evans doing it all. So I loved every second of tonight's game. Big win for Duke.
Well, that's enough.
That's enough. It's a 37-point win. All right.
Fun game. What, besides the gold medal's the wrong answer. What else could Carmelo Anthony and Krzyzewski be talking about? What other things possibly?
Parker,
is there anything else those guys would have crossover between the two of them?
I do think both individuals enjoy a glass of wine.
I was about to say wine. That would
yeah.
Hey, did I see? Go ahead.
No, I was just beyond that. I don't. They had shared experiences winning gold medals.
Did I see Wojah sitting there with Coach K too?
Of course.
I thought I did.
All-Star break. Everybody comes back.
Somewhere a floor was being slapped.
And because Jay Williams was up on the broadcast.
Yeah,
I mean,
right,
it was a perfect night.
Man, I love it. Was he leading a chant of Tar Heels? I think that's how that was going, right?
Okay.
And he admitted to a third personal foul in the 2001 championship game. So I don't know if he's allowed back for the Duke Ring of Honor.
Well, we want to talk about one of the biggest storylines in college basketball in the last day or so, as a great day for Duke fans, and I think a great day in some ways for a lot of Kansas State fans on Sunday. Pretty happy to see Jerome Tang out the door, but I'll tell you what, this process is about to get very, very messy. We're going to talk about Tang's dismissal from Kansas State, the buyout, all of the storylines coming out of this big story coming out here in the Big 12, all that coming up in just a second. But first, folks, workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inboxes overflowing, and the one position that you need to fill is still open. And when the pressure's on and you need the right hire, that's a job for Sponsored Jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for with skills, experience, and location, so you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute that I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed's data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, and more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. All right, folks, closing out the show, talking about the big story. Sunday evening, we found out that Kansas State is going to dismiss head coach Jerome Tang, which, Isaac, you and I started Locked On College Basketball in the 22-23 season, and it would have been unfathomable at the end of that year when the Marquise Noel and Keontae Johnson lead that team to the Elite Eight. Tang is on top of the world. Arkansas is throwing all the Tyson chicken money they possibly can to try to get him. Kansas State signs him to a massive extension, and nobody really questioned it at the time because of how phenomenal he had been in that first year. He was a longtime assistant coach at Baylor, had a strong reputation. And now here we are, and it doesn't feel like a shock. The biggest shock about the situation is that Kansas State is attempting to fire him for cause and is trying to get out of paying the $18 million buyout, which, again, they agreed to because they needed to put that in the contract to keep him in Manhattan. What a story. Christian, we'll go to you first, obviously, as our host of Locked On Kansas State. What was your initial reaction to finding out that this was actually going to happen here in the middle of this season as opposed to after the year or, down the line when that buyout shrank a little bit?
Yeah, well, before that, now all I can think about is I wish one of those Arkansas Dino Nuggets hit and actually landed, and maybe we wouldn't be in this same situation right now of firing Jerome Tang on Sunday. It was wild. I thought that it was needed to happen. Poor performance the last 2 years when you're sitting at the top of the transfer portal rankings, at least in the eyes of some of the industry rankings, after Coleman Hawkins last season, after PJ Haggerty this past year. And although PJ Haggerty's having a great season, he's second in the country in scoring. It's just not enough. You're sitting at the bottom of the Big 12, 1-11 in conference play. You knew it had to happen, but $18.67 million buyout you're owed. You just don't think it's never going to happen. And then post the season, May 1st, it only goes down to $15 million. And then, you have to worry about the fact that the transfer portal is already done. So is it even worth doing it then? Then you enter the whole fact of it being for cause, and the reason for cause, I'm not going to lie to you, and I have been completely honest with my everydayers on the show. It's soft. It's completely bogus, the fact that why they're trying to go for this and saying the reason that they're going for cause is because how he talked about the players in the presser. I mean, let's just talk about it here. This is a national college basketball show. How many times we've heard UConn coach Hurley talk about his players? I mean, that's the first one that comes to my mind. I mean, Scott Barnes from Tennessee talks about players getting benched for years ago. When the new NIL happened, he benched his players and said it's the new business now. It's just the way it is. Mick Cronin's a perfect example. So it's just, to me, it's just wild. I don't know if Kansas State has a leg to stand on. He's hired some very interesting legal counsel in Tom Mars and Bennett Spire. Tom Mars was in part of the recent legal settlement when it came to Trinidad Chambliss of Ole Miss, the quarterback, to get an extra year of eligibility. So it's going to be very interesting, and I think it's going to get ugly pretty quick.
Tom Mars basically already confirmed that it's going to get ugly because his statement that he made, I think he made this to Pete Thamel of ESPN. He said, quote, "If Kansas State's president and AD really think the school was embarrassed by recent events, that's nothing compared to the embarrassment that both of them are about to experience," which incredible shots fired here by Tom Mars and by this staff. And yeah, I mean, I'm with you 100%, Christian. Like, even if you look at Jerome Tang's quote, like, yes, he said these guys don't deserve to wear the uniform, and you can aggregate parts of the quote and make it look really bad, which is what aggregators do and how that kind of those quotes go spread around social media. But he also said it means something to wear a K-State uniform. It means something to put on this purple. He said everything this university is about and all that it's been about. I love this place. They don't love this place, so they don't deserve to be here. And like, that's a very different quote than what is being kind of passed around. And to me, to try to make an argument that he embarrassed the university when that's part of the quote, it's just not going to fly. I'm assuming this is with the intention of trying to get some kind of settlement out of this and just work with Tang to pay him less. But I don't think this is going to go very well for Kansas State. And it already seems like it's off to a pretty bad start. Nobody really wants to defend Jerome Tang as a coach. It hasn't been good, but a whole lot of people are defending the fact that he signed a contract and Kansas State should be honoring it. And if they didn't want to fire him because he was doing a bad job, they shouldn't have put an $18.6 million buyout on that deal.
Well,
Yeah,
and
go ahead.
It sets crazy precedent for a lot of, and like part of me wants to go macro, like, hey, like sometimes accountability is critical, and like we need to be open to like that being part of holding people accountable, like at a very like big like societal level, but even at a more micro level, it outlined a standard and a level of play that if anything, it'd be like, hey, this is actually a good thing for Kansas State's image because. Look, they had Michael Beasley once upon a time. I don't think of them as a basketball school. Like he says, like, no, this is a standard we are not playing to. It's almost a positive spin on what it should. Like, this is what people should be equating Kansas State with, this specific level of basketball, and we're not living up to it. And suddenly that's the drawback. The can of worms this would open if the NCAA, or I guess if Kansas State really, because that's the suit I'm thinking about. If Kansas State were to win this suit and say, no, that is cause, no coaching contract would ever, it'd all be jokes. There'd be no such thing as a buyout anymore. It'd all be cause.
I think the biggest thing here that drives me nuts, and I think it's what is making a lot of the fans upset as well, is how fast he flipped. Because after the Iowa State loss just a few days ago, before the Cincinnati game where he made those comments, they lost by 34 points at home. And he said he wasn't disappointed in his team. He said the fans didn't deserve a reason to have a reason to why they're struggling right now. And then the next game when they lost by 29 to Cincinnati, obviously a worse team than Iowa State, that's when he went completely scorched earth on his players. A lot of people, I think, felt it was performative, and I think that's what caused this. A national media kind of smear campaign started as well. We saw PTI, we saw Fox Sports, everybody start doing this, and then that's when the athletic director decided that all of a sudden that he's concerned how it looks against the student athlete. So it's very suspect.
Yeah, look, I know no one's firing Kelvin Sampson. He went out publicly and said we were poor. So
yeah.
I just,
everyone's been giving him money since then, and it's a
great story. Great story.
And Mick Cronin gave him $1, didn't he?
Yeah.
And said every dollar counts.
What happened when Rick Pitino called his team soft and slow laterally? It was like, oh yeah,
slow laterally. That was like 3 years.
Yeah, revitalization of the St. John's. Then the next year they were the 2 seed, and ironically, I was actually at that game. I was sitting there, and then all of a sudden I got this alert while I was waiting to leave New York. And I get this alert. It's like Rick Pitino goes crazy. I was like, wait a minute. I was just in there. How did this happen? And sure enough. So slow laterally and soft and not meant to be playing basketball in the 2020s. Those mean nothing if you can't say that guys like didn't deserve to wear the jersey. So, you never want to hear that stuff, but I think it's ridiculous to try to get cause out of that.
Yeah,
I completely agree.
Coach, how do you adjudicate? Because now I'm sitting here trying to think where is the line? Like, I'm just trying to coach my dudes, and I know how to coach my dudes and how to get the best out of them. But now I've got this in the back of my head, like, man, if I challenge these guys, if I hold them accountable, have I crossed the line? Am I going to get fired for cause? Which, fine, give me millions of dollars to go away. I'm great with that. But it's like if I actually want to coach and not be a millionaire and not do anything, then I don't know how to handle this.
I'll take the millionaire. You take the coaching. We'll call it good. We'll call it good. There you go.
And what are you giving up? That's another question too, right? Like, what are you giving up by doing this? Maybe you win a couple $1 million back, but you get your entire program dragged through the mud while it's happening, and you still have to go hire a head coach. And athletic director Gene Taylor has noted that he wants to go get a head coach with head coaching experience. He talked about that in the press conference after the statement about Jerome Tang being fired, which again is a knock towards Jerome Tang because he was only an assistant coach at Baylor before he taking the head coach job for Kansas State. But what head coach, at least at the power level, is going to want to possibly make that transition to Kansas State if this is the president from the leadership of the university right now? That is a very tough pill to swallow if you're a Kansas State fan.
Coach without a job.
Well,
Jared Haas.
The shame is that it as a Big 12, and I mean,
be perennially on the bubble.
To stay Big 12
We'll
centric.
take it.
That's better
We'll
than where
take
we're
it
at
in
right
the
now,
Little
buddy.
Apple, baby.
No, but like a Big 12 head coaching job should be a premier job, right? And to like do anything to knock it, it's going to like the St. Louis guy should probably get a promotion somewhere in the offseason. I don't know if it's Kansas State, but like somewhere he should go somewhere, right? I don't know that you're going to get people wanting to cut because they'll have options. Why are they going to take your option if they have options?
Yeah, I agree. I would love to have Josh Scherz as the next head coach of Kansas State for the record. I'd love to have Jared Calhoun as the next coach for the record if I had to pick one of those.
Andy, we said that yesterday.
Yeah, we did.
Yes.
Yeah, Calhoun would be a great fit. Utah State somehow every coach that not only do they gone through like 4 coaches in the last 7 years, I think, but like pretty much every one of them has moved on, has had success at their next stop. Calhoun would be an incredible addition.
Former Bob Huggins assistant that works at Kansas State.
There you go. Folks, that's going to wrap it up for us today. This is a really fun conversation. I know it's really Big 12 heavy, but hey, that's the best conference in college basketball right now. So that's what we're going to be talking about for the time being. But we got incredible weekend. We touched on this a little bit earlier, but I want to highlight this for those of you who maybe missed it. I think the third time in college basketball history, I believe, we're going to have the top 4 teams squaring off against each other on the same day. Michigan versus Duke and Houston versus Arizona. Those games are going to be on Saturday. An electric day of college basketball. Absolutely cannot wait. Definitely check that out. And again, we'll have a squad show next week, probably talking about more of the fun news and notes around this game as we get closer and closer to March. But as always, folks, we want to say apologies to the Lawyer family. Let's go Wild Popes. Cheers to the Mick Bruins. And until next time, peace out.